Introduction. For years, Philadelphia soul thrilled the world with its vibrant melodies and heartfelt vocals. Yet behind the success, a chilling story unfolded, one that began in triumph but ended in tragedy. It involves two men whose names once lit up the music charts, John Whitehead and Gene McFadden. They wrote a global anthem about unstoppable perseverance, only to face grim realities that would shatter their partnership and cut their lives heartbreakingly short. To this day, many fans still have questions. One was gunned down in an unsolved ambush. No suspects, no closure. The other passed only a couple of years later, leaving behind whispers that the heartbreak weakened his spirit until his body simply gave up. Was there more to their fate than mere coincidence? As you read on, you'll learn about their meteoric rise, the hidden turmoil behind the scenes, and the jaw-dropping theories that still haunt their legacy. Section 1. Early Days and Rise to Fame. John Whitehead and Gene McFadden grew up in Philadelphia, a city alive with soul and R&B influences. In their teens, they formed a group known as the Epsilons, driven by a mutual dream of carving out a space in the music world. Their commitment caught the attention of Otis Redding, an undeniable force in soul music. Redding saw raw talent in these young artists and believed in the promise they held. He brought them on tour, giving them a glimpse of the industry they longed to conquer. But life rarely goes as planned. Before McFadden and Whitehead could fully absorb the lessons Redding had to share, tragedy struck when the legendary soul singer died in a plane crash in 1967. For the teenagers who had just begun to see the music world on a larger scale, this loss was a brutal reminder of how fragile even the biggest dreams can be. Still, they refused to walk away. With Redding gone, they shifted gears. Instead of chasing the spotlight solely as performers, they started writing songs, pouring their emotions onto paper, determined to find success however they could. Soon, Philadelphia International Records, led by Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, noticed their potential. This label was already becoming a powerhouse for Philadelphia soul, working with acts like the O'Jays and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. McFadden and Whitehead joined this environment, honing their craft and evolving into promising songwriters and producers. They penned unforgettable hits, giving voice to some of the most influential names in R&B and soul. The duo co-wrote songs for Teddy Pendergrass, Harold Melvin, and the Blue Notes, and the O'Jays, helping define the distinctive sound that would place Philadelphia at the epicenter of a soul renaissance. Yet in their hearts, they wanted to step onto center stage themselves. Years of behind-the-scenes work built a foundation, but also a longing. One day, they hoped, the music that soared to the top of the charts would be their own. For a while, that dream felt distant. Industry politics were tough, and finding the perfect single that captured people's attention was no easy feat. But just as they wondered if they might remain background figures forever, they struck gold. What followed was a whirlwind that would change their status in the music business, and for a time, give them the spotlight they had always craved. Yet even as they prepared to step out from behind the scenes, neither of them could have foreseen the cruel fate that awaited them years later. Section 2. Breakthrough with Ain't No Stopping Us Now. After years of crafting hits for other artists, McFadden and Whitehead finally decided it was time to showcase their own voices. In 1979, they released Ain't No Stopping Us Now. From its very first note, the track electrified listeners, shooting straight to the top of the R&B charts and making a strong mark on the Billboard Hot 100. It became an anthem, played at celebrations, sporting events, and civil rights gatherings. The uplifting lyrics spoke directly to anyone who had ever felt held back or underestimated. Now, here was an affirmation of hope. Ain't no stopping us now. Public adoration felt like validation for the years of ghostwriting, producing, and quietly working in the background. Finally, McFadden and Whitehead had their own blazing success. Critics praised them for capturing the essence of the disco era while still retaining the soulful authenticity of Philadelphia. Disco was at its peak, and the duo's positive, infectious message became a soundtrack for joyous moments across the nation. Their single sold millions of copies, firmly establishing them in the pantheon of 70s music icons. Though they had found what they'd been chasing, maintaining that level of fame would prove challenging. Trends change quickly, and the disco wave that once propelled their success began to recede in the early 1980s. The music world moved on, and a string of subsequent releases never replicated the monumental success of that one perfect track. Yet their legacy was set. Whenever Ain't No Stopping Us Now played, it triggered a rush of nostalgia and enthusiasm. Fans sang along, remembering the first moment they heard that triumphant melody. John Whitehead and Gene McFadden were more than just supporting players now. They were legitimate stars in their own right. That star status, however, came with complications. Behind every hit is a labyrinth of contracts, royalty agreements, and potential conflicts with record labels. While the duo put on a confident facade, people whispered about underlying tensions, financial struggles, management squabbles, and the ever-present question of how to follow up such a massive hit. Some say the duo felt overshadowed by the very artists they had once helped, while others suspect deals were made that never fully benefited them. Whatever the truth, a dark cloud began to form behind the scenes. No matter how bright the spotlight, there was a sense that deeper issues were brewing, ones that might not be resolved with another chart-topping single. Section 3. Brewing Tensions and Industry Rumors. By the late 1980s, the music landscape was shifting rapidly. Audiences gravitated toward hip-hop, techno, and the emerging new wave sounds. For seasoned soul and disco veterans, the industry became more cutthroat than ever. A handful of artists managed to evolve seamlessly, but many struggled to find their footing. McFadden and Whitehead discovered that repeated success was elusive, and this heightened the stress on both their personal and professional lives. Some acquaintances claimed they began mingling in circles that weren't strictly about music. The Philadelphia scene had both glittering successes and undercurrents of criminal activity, just like any big city with deep cultural roots. Rumors circulated that certain record executives or promoters leaned on questionable connections to either protect their interests or intimidate rival acts. Whether McFadden and Whitehead ever found themselves entangled with such figures remains uncertain, but whispers abounded. Financial difficulties piled up for many veteran artists. Some found themselves in disputes over royalties or contract terms. Others dealt with unscrupulous middlemen who demanded bigger cuts. Money might have been flowing on the surface, but by the time it trickled to the artists, there often wasn't much left. The duo reportedly questioned how their earnings could vanish so swiftly, given the enduring popularity of Ain't No Stopping Us Now. As the tension grew, so did speculation. Could these behind-the-scenes feuds spill over into real-life threats? Had they witnessed something they weren't meant to see? And if so, could that have placed them in danger? Such speculation may sound dramatic, but the music industry has long been a magnet for both legitimate businesses and shady operators. While no direct evidence emerged to prove that Whitehead or McFadden were targeted by powerful figures, many fans believe the seeds of future tragedy were planted during this period. All of it, unresolved business deals, shifting friendships, the frustration of being overshadowed by new acts, converged into an uneasy chapter in their lives. But the real heartbreak was yet to come, and it would strike with terrifying ferocity. Section 4. The Tragic of John Whitehead. On May 11, 2004, John Whitehead's life ended in a moment of unexpected violence that still chills anyone who hears the details. He was standing outside his West Oak Lane home in Philadelphia, working on his car. It was a simple, everyday task until multiple appeared out of nowhere. The attackers fired several shots in rapid succession, aiming with lethal precision. Within seconds, the 55-year-old musician was lying in the street, mortally wounded to the head and chest. The assault seemed more like an execution than a random act. By the time emergency responders arrived, Whitehead had lost too much blood. He didn't survive the trip to the hospital. Neighbors who witnessed the shooting were left in shock. The man they saw every day, friendly, unassuming, and proud of his musical background, was gone in an instant. As word spread, fans and friends alike struggled with disbelief. Who would want to harm John Whitehead? Officials considered several possibilities. One was that the attack was a case of mistaken identity in a neighborhood prone to violent crime. Another theory suggested an ongoing vendetta, perhaps a business deal gone wrong or a personal dispute that escalated. And there were those who believed this might be a targeted warning from individuals unhappy with certain financial or personal matters. Law enforcement launched an investigation, but leads quickly dried up. Witnesses were either afraid to come forward or had little reliable information to share. Without substantial evidence, the case turned cold. No suspects were ever named, no arrests were made, and Whitehead's family found themselves grappling with both grief and the painful absence of answers. For a while, the media covered the case, recalling Whitehead's contribution to music and the tragedy of losing someone who had inspired countless people through his art. But like many unsolved, attention gradually faded. Amid the silence, some asked if Whitehead had inadvertently crossed paths with dangerous figures. Others claimed it was purely bad luck, his life stolen for reasons that had nothing to do with his celebrity. The truth remains murky. All anyone can say for certain is that a Philadelphia legend was struck down, leaving behind a gaping wound that never fully healed. For the city, for the fans, and especially for his closest friend, Gene McFadden. Section 5. Gene McFadden's decline and passing. When John Whitehead died, Gene McFadden lost more than a collaborator. He lost a brother in spirit. They had started out as kids, sharpened their talents together, and shared the triumph of "Ain't No Stopping Us Now." In the wake of Whitehead's murder, McFadden was left reeling. Those who knew him observed a heavy sadness. Gone was the energetic soul star who could light up a studio with a quick joke or an impromptu performance. In his place was a man carrying a profound weight on his shoulders. Within months, McFadden's health took a dire turn. He was diagnosed with lung and liver cancer, and the disease progressed faster than anyone expected. Some suspected that the stress and despair after Whitehead's death might have weakened his immune defenses, although that's impossible to confirm. What is beyond dispute is that McFadden's spirit had been severely shaken. He struggled through medical treatments, but his condition declined relentlessly. On January 27, 2006, barely 2 years after Whitehead's, Gene McFadden passed away at the age of 56. While he wasn't, his death carried its own brand of heartbreak. The closeness he shared with Whitehead was legendary, and friends say he never truly recovered from that traumatic loss. In the end, the man who co-wrote one of the most uplifting anthems in soul history seemed unable to overcome the sorrow that shadowed his final years. For fans of Philadelphia soul, this 1-2 punch felt especially cruel. These were the men who championed resilience in the face of adversity. Yet adversity had ultimately swallowed them both, first through an unsolved murder, then through a ravaging illness. Some whispered that McFadden's passing felt inevitable once his partner was gone, as though his heart couldn't endure a world without that creative bond. Others found it eerily symbolic. Even the ultimate song of perseverance could not shield its creators from life's most brutal twists. Their families mourned in different ways. Whitehead's loved ones kept pressing authorities for answers in the murder case, desperate for closure. McFadden's relatives wrestled with the knowledge that he had battled cancer while drowning in grief. Both sets of families shared a universal question: why did tragedy strike these men who had given so much joy to the world? No answers emerged. In time, people began to compare their fate with other shocking and puzzling losses in music history. Section 6. Parallel tragedies in music history. When the story of McFadden and Whitehead surfaces, many fans can't help but recall the eerie parallels with other musicians who met tragic or mysterious ends. It's a reminder that the music industry, for all its glitz, often carries a darker undercurrent. Sam Cooke, for instance, was another soul pioneer who died under sudden, suspicious circumstances in a Los Angeles motel. The official version claimed Cooke had attacked the motel manager while searching for a woman who had fled with his belongings, and the manager shot him in self-defense. But countless questions remain. Cooke's influence in both the music sphere and civil rights made him a powerful figure, and some believe he was deliberately set up. The truth remains elusive, with conspiracy theories persisting that Cooke's rising stature threatened someone enough to have him offed. Marvin Gaye's story is equally haunting. Killed by his own father in 1984, Gaye left behind a tragic legacy marked by family strife, personal demons, and unresolved conflicts. Publicly, Gaye was a beloved figure. His timeless hits like "What's Going On" continue to resonate. Privately, he wrestled with internal battles, made more intense by drug use, and a toxic relationship with his father. When he stepped in to defend his mother from an angry outburst, events spiraled out of control, ending in a single gunshot that took his life. Even more unsettling is the claim that Gaye might have felt so defeated he was asking to be harmed because he couldn't bring himself to do it. And then there was Jesse Belvin, a rising R&B star who co-wrote Earth Angel. Just as he was on the cusp of mainstream success, he died in a suspicious car accident after performing at an integrated concert in the Deep South, a volatile move in that era. Rumors spread that his tires had been tampered with, and many believed it was a racially motivated act. Like Whitehead's killing, the real facts remain unclear, and the heartbreak lingers in the annals of music lore. Paul Williams of The Temptations is another musician whose death was deemed a S-side, but left numerous unsettling details unexplained. Found in a Detroit alley with a gunshot wound to the head, he had no fingerprints on the weapon. His loved ones found it difficult to accept the official conclusion, pointing out that Williams had been preparing to rejoin the group. Could someone have had a motive to silence him? Or was it truly a tragic, self-inflicted end? In each case, the sorrow is amplified by lingering doubts. Unanswered questions feed theories about hidden agendas, personal vendettas, or the darkest corridors of the entertainment world. McFadden and Whitehead's downfall slots almost seamlessly into this pattern. One life taken by violence, the other slipping away under the shadow of grief. Section 6. Parallel tragedies in music history. When the story of McFadden and Whitehead surfaces, many fans can't help but recall the eerie parallels with other musicians who met tragic or mysterious ends. It's a reminder that the music industry, for all its glitz, often carries a darker undercurrent. Sam Cooke, for instance, was another soul pioneer who died under sudden, suspicious circumstances in a Los Angeles motel. The official version claimed Cooke had attacked the motel manager while searching for a woman who had fled with his belongings, and the manager shot him in self-defense. But countless questions remain. Cooke's influence in both the music sphere and civil rights made him a powerful figure, and some believe he was deliberately set up. The truth remains elusive, with conspiracy theories persisting that Cooke's rising stature threatened someone enough to have him offed. Marvin Gaye's story is equally haunting. Killed by his own father in 1984, Gaye left behind a tragic legacy marked by family strife, personal demons, and unresolved conflicts. Publicly, Gaye was a beloved figure. His timeless hits like What's Going On continue to resonate. Privately, he wrestled with internal battles, made more intense by drug use and a toxic relationship with his father. When he stepped in to defend his mother from an angry outburst, events spiraled out of control, ending in a single gunshot that took his life. Even more unsettling is the claim that Gaye might have felt so defeated he was asking to be harmed because he couldn't bring himself to do it. And then there was Jesse Belvin, a rising R&B star who co-wrote Earth Angel. Just as he was on the cusp of mainstream success, he died in a suspicious car accident after performing at an integrated concert in the Deep South, a volatile move in that era. Rumors spread that his tires had been tampered with, and many believed it was a racially motivated act. Like Whitehead's killing, the real facts remain unclear, and the heartbreak lingers in the annals of music lore. Paul Williams of The Temptations is another musician whose death was deemed a S-side, but left numerous unsettling details unexplained. Found in a Detroit alley with a gunshot wound to the head, he had no fingerprints on the weapon. His loved ones found it difficult to accept the official conclusion, pointing out that Williams had been preparing to rejoin the group. Could someone have had a motive to silence him, or was it truly a tragic self-inflicted end? In each case, the sorrow is amplified by lingering doubts. Unanswered questions feed theories about hidden agendas, personal vendettas, or the darkest corridors of the entertainment world. McFadden and Whitehead's downfall slots almost seamlessly into this pattern. One life taken by violence, the other slipping away under the shadow of grief. Section 7. The unanswered questions. Nearly 2 decades after Whitehead's murder, the case remains unsolved. No one has faced charges, no new evidence has surfaced, and no confession has ever come to light. Philadelphia's high crime rates at the time likely made it easier for the killers to vanish. But was it purely street crime? Or was the murder orchestrated by someone in the music industry? Family members have wrestled with these questions without any resolution. One rumor holds that Whitehead had gotten in over his head with debt or had knowledge of questionable dealings. Another points to random gang violence. The problem is, the lack of clarity leaves too much room for guesswork. Some claim investigators gave up too quickly, focusing on other cases. Others say potential witnesses stayed silent out of fear. As for McFadden, speculation continues about just how much emotional pain sped up his decline. Grief is a powerful force, and while medical science can't definitively say whether heartbreak triggers severe illnesses, plenty of anecdotal evidence suggests a broken spirit can worsen a physical condition. Friends describe him as restless, unable to shake the vision of losing his creative partner in such a brutal way. He had always been the optimist, the showman, the dynamic counterpart to Whitehead's calm demeanor. Now, that optimism seemed extinguished. Their families still hope for closure. They want answers about who ambushed John Whitehead and robbed him of decades he should have lived. They also want the world to remember that McFadden was more than just another name in old disco record sleeves. He was a father, a friend, a songwriter whose heart was torn apart when violence rocked his life. Whether or not the full truth ever emerges, the scars remain for everyone touched by these tragedies. Section 8. Reflections on their legacy. Before their story became overshadowed by death, McFadden and Whitehead were just two ambitious kids who believed in the power of music. They poured their souls into songwriting, backing big names who soared to the top of the charts. Then their moment arrived with Ain't No Stopping Us Now, an instant crowd favorite. For a moment, the two dreamers from Philadelphia tasted the sweet reward of worldwide recognition. Their success paved the way for other young talents, showing that if you had the grit, the vision, and the right partnership, you could transform personal hardships into art that resonated with millions. Despite the friction that inevitably bubbles up in any entertainment career, the duo's synergy was genuine, and fans felt that authenticity whenever their song blasted through speakers. But real life doesn't always mirror the hopeful tone of a hit single. Sometimes the very individuals who pen messages of empowerment and resilience must grapple with circumstances far darker than any lyric could convey. In reading about McFadden and Whitehead, one senses the tragic irony. The men who told the world there was no stopping them were themselves halted by forces beyond their control. One violently, the other through a swift illness that took him far too early. Their story now stands as a haunting chapter in the annals of Philadelphia soul, an unsolved murder, a shattered friendship, and a remarkable anthem that took on a new, bittersweet resonance. What began as a celebration of defying obstacles has become a reminder of how fragile even the brightest stars can be. Who shot John Whitehead that day? And why haven't they ever faced justice? Did Gene McFadden's sorrow truly erode his health, or was it just cruel timing? And does the music industry harbor hidden truths behind these tragedies that still elude the public eye? The answers might remain buried in silent neighborhoods and forgotten archives, existing only as rumors that pass between those who were closest to the pair. Yet the conversation continues every time Ain't No Stopping Us Now plays. At weddings, family reunions, or social gatherings where people stand up to dance, united by the uplifting energy of a timeless classic. They may not realize the heartbreak behind the song, but the legacy lives on. Perhaps in recalling their story, we can honor what McFadden and Whitehead achieved while remembering the harsh reality they faced off stage. Like many great artists, their lives ended with questions left unanswered. Still, their voices echo in the music they left behind, urging the world to keep going, keep hoping, and keep believing that nothing can hold you back, at least not forever. Anyway, that's it for this story, folks.